Nick Saban issues statement on DJ Durkin's involvement with Alabama. You had to know this was coming. Earlier this week, a report surfaced that former Maryland head coach has been in what was described as a consultant-like capacity ahead of its playoff game against Oklahoma later this month. Given Durkin's controversial exit from College Park, the report raised more than a few eyebrows. In light of the mini firestorm that erupted, Alabama Friday night issued a statement attributed to in which the head football coach of the Crimson Tide addressed the level of Durkin's involvement with his football program. Durkin, two members of the training staff and then head strength and conditioning coach were in early August after a bombshell report alleged mishandling of the medical event that preceded the death of Maryland offensive lineman and detailed what was described as within the football program. That report described the toxic culture under Durkin as one based on fear, intimidation, belittling, humiliation and embarrassment. Players were, allegedly, routinely subjected to what was described as extreme verbal abuse that included, in part, obscenity-laced epithets meant to mock their masculinity. On October 30, it was confirmed that Durkin would remain as the Terrapins' head coach. The next day, and amidst an avalanche of criticism from, and, U of M, College Park president announced that Durkin had been. Everybody deserves a second chance, although one can debate the merits of giving that second chance so close to a coach's first chance cut short, in part, by the death of one of his football players. Personally, I don't know what length of penance should be served, but it just feels like less than 2 months is not nearly enough. At some point in the great UCF debate of 2017-18, the burden switched from the exclusioners to the excluded. Actually, saying at some point doesn't accurately tell the story, because we all know what the point was that made the worm turn. When UCF, smartly, declared itself the 2017 national champion, feathers were ruffled across the country, but mostly in the SEC, home of the actual 2017 national champions. Most seemed to recognize it as something of a publicity stunt, but those in the South reacted to the move somewhere on the scale from annoyed to offended. There's a sociology study to be had here about how fans across every sport root for Cinderella except college football fans, who seem to resent their sport's underdogs, but that's a blog post for another day. Florida head coach told reporters earlier this month that Florida would be open to a 2-for-1 with UCF, prompting UCF AD to tweet that no concrete offer was ever made. I feel compelled to jump in here and remind everyone there was no offer to play. The UFAD said they would be open to discussing it. That does not constitute any sort of offer, Andy Sealy, at Ag Sealy, however. On Monday the published emails between UCF AD and Florida AD, where the two hash out the prospect of future games between the Knights and Gators. In the emails, White requests a home-and-home or a neutral site game with Florida, but Strickland says any games would have to be a 2-for-1 series. UF isn't in the market for home-and-home or a neutral site games against non-Autonomy 5 opponents, Strickland wrote. However, we would be open to a series similar to what we've agreed to with USF, 2 games in Gainesville and 1 in Orlando. We are in need of a home opener for the 2022 season, so the September 3, 2022 date you mentioned would be a perfect date to begin the series, and we can fill in the remaining games from there. White, who seemed to be writing for an audience other than Strickland, replied in part, much like Batman, White has instituted a blanket number 2-for-1s policy in the face of common sense. Perhaps it wouldn't make sense for UCF to play a 2-for-1 with, say, Iowa. But a 2-for-1 with their state's flagship school would be beneficial for the Knights. Their fans would see their team play in an SEC stadium twice and then drive home afterward, while also getting Florida in Orlando. It may not be strictly fair, but as a wise man once said, it's called, the way it is. UCF has played Florida twice all time, not since 2006 and never in Orlando. If the ultimate goal is to make the playoff, getting Florida on their schedule 3 times would unquestionably help toward that end. And yeah, it's not a written offer and it's not a level playing field, but it's still a good offer for UCF. White and company should hop on it or hear any future complaints fall on deaf ears. Has officially decided to ply his football wares at the next level, but not until his last season at this level has played out. After going back and forth on the subject for the past couple of months, Weber announced on Twitter Sunday that he has decided to leave Ohio State early and will live the dream I've had since 5 years old. I will be declaring for the 2019 NFL Draft. Additionally, the running back confirmed that he will play in the Rose Bowl against Washington New Year's Day. Mike Weber, at Mike Weber, a highly touted 2015 signee whose OSU career, Weber has rushed for 2,580 yards, 15th all-time at the school, and 24 touchdowns the past 3 seasons. The Detroit, Michigan native's 1,096 yards as a redshirt freshman led the Buckeyes, while his 9 rushing touchdowns tied for the team lead that same season. Weber's 858 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2018 are currently second on the team. When we say a streak, a stat, a side of the ball is the best in college football, typically it's implied such a statement applies only to FBS. The game's highest division gobbles up 99.9% of the attention, and with good reason. That's where 99.9% of the best players live. But when we say UCF's 25-game winning streak is now the longest in college football, it's actually true now. Mary Hardin-Baylor, Texas, knocked off Mount Union, Ohio, 24-16 in the Division III National Championship on Friday night, in the process ending the Purple Raiders' 29-game winning streak and handing UCF the crown. According to a study, half of the nation's 10 longest winning streaks reside in the FBS, and with good reason. While the other divisions funnel all their best teams into one bracket in order to find the very best team, FBS puts only 4 teams in its tournament, allowing UCF to put together 2 straight unbeaten seasons, minus 1 game, without competing for the national championship. 1. UCF, 25 games. 2. North Dakota State, FCS, 20. 3T. Alabama, 15. 3T. Mary Hardin-Baylor, Division III, 15. 3T. Morningside, NAIA, 15. 3T. Valdosta State, Division II, 15. 7T. Clemson, 13. 7T. Notre Dame, 13. 9. Princeton, FCS, 10. 10. Army, 8. Certainly the Knights would trade their 25-game winning streak for a shot at Alabama, Clemson and the like, but their consolation prize is the longest winning streak in all of college football, for as long as they keep winning. Got the biggest win of his Oregon head coaching tenure on Saturday. The Ducks don't play again until New Year's Eve. Oregon landed the commitment of 5-star defensive end on Saturday, a 6'4", 239-pound defensive end out of Oaks Christian in Thousand Oaks, California. Thibodeau announced his pledge on ESPN during halftime of. Thibodeau is rated the number 1 player in ESPN's rankings and number 10 by And. Those rankings put him at number 2 in the composite rankings, trailing only IMG Academy defensive end, a Georgia commit. Oregon beat out Alabama, Florida and Florida State for Thibodeau's services. There were a lot of reasons why I chose Oregon, Thibodeau said, via. I have a great comfort level with the coaching staff and I know I can go in there and get developed. I've known Coach Keith Hayward since I was just a freshman and I really like Coach Joe Salavi, DL coach, a lot. He's a great coach, one of the best coaches in the country and I can't wait to learn from him. Thibodeau will be only the 3rd composite top 2 player to sign with a Pac-12 school in the past decade, following USC's in 2009 and UCLA's in 2017. As a cautionary tale for all in Eugene, neither player really lived up to his respective billing. Barkley did not lead USC back to the elite of college football and has thrown just 174 passes as a mid-round NFL draft pick, while Phillips is at UCLA. With Thibodeau now in the fold, Oregon's 2019 class now ranks number 5 nationally in the composite team rankings, a 20-man class that includes 11 4-stars and now a 12th blue-chip player in Thibodeau.